Women's Center of New Bedford steps out into the spotlight, if you will, during the month of October. It's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and the Women's Center has 2 events every year to draw attention to this terrible problem and what all of us can really do. We all have a part in this, what all of us can do to end it. My guest is Pamela MacLeod-Lima, Director of the Women's Center in New Bedford. You also have an office in Fall River, is that right?
Yes, we do. We actually serve the entire South Coast from Somerset and Swansea down to Wareham for sexual assault, and also part of that is for domestic violence as well. So,
how long have you been in the office in Fall River, Pam?
Since I've been here, actually. We opened in 2002. When we took over the sexual assault services for that area. Mm-hmm. And we also have a domestic violence shelter in that area as well, because we took our sister's place under our umbrella about 8 years ago.
All right, so we're up to date here. How bad is this problem in New Bedford? There are people who are probably listening say, well, there's been so much awareness, it's got to be better. It's got to be better. Well,
the national statistics tell us that it is indeed better since domestic violence agencies began working some 30, 40 years ago. Actually, we're one of the oldest in the country. Mm-hmm. We are now celebrating, I hate to say celebrating, but marking our 45th year. We can celebrate the fact that we're still here for victims, although it's not celebratory that we still need to be doing this work. So it is better. It is not by any means where we would like to be in terms of making sure that all victims get the services that they need, and also in turning the tide on the occurrence of domestic violence. And the only way we can do that is with more prevention activities. And I'm very happy to say that this year, Senator Montagney was successful in getting an earmark for the Women's Center specifically to do prevention education with children, because we've got to start it younger, earlier. We've got to get kids understanding about healthy relationships and knowing the danger signs when they're in one that is unhealthy.
Absolutely. Not only female, but males too.
Absolutely. It does affect both genders, all genders, transgendered folks as well. The LGBTQ community is not doing any better at this or any worse than we are. But in fact, it is predominant in the LGBTQ community as well. So it affects everyone. I will say it is predominantly women that come to us and that have been affected by domestic violence, about 85 to 90%. But we think that the men who are victims is a very soft number because they don't tend to come forward. It's kind of embarrassing in our society to say, oh, you've been victimized by a woman, but victimization takes all kinds of tracks, and one is social, one is financial. There can be a lot of denying somebody just their right to autonomy, and so it does happen to both genders, and both genders can be abusers as well as be victims. But it is a predominantly, has always been, the victimization has predominantly always been male towards female, and that's why the Women's Center came to be. But even though we have that name, we want men to know that we're there for them too. You know, women give birth to all children, not just to female children, and we care about what happens to all of them. And we do have services for men. We have individual victims that come to us. We do groups with men. And we do recognize that this crosses all genders, as it does all social strata and so forth. It is an equal opportunity offense, unfortunately.
Okay, you had 2 events in October each year. One has already happened. Briefly tell us about that one.
Well, that was our tree lighting, which we do in front of City Hall. And if you notice, the mayor has made to the front of City Hall purple, which is great. It has a lovely purple tint to it in honor of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we have a tree that we light that is to remind people not just of the victims who've died, and we do lose people every single year, even in our community, but also those that are still living in violence, and to make people think maybe about what they can do to turn that tide back.
And the second event is a somber event as well. It is planned for October 23rd. It's a candlelight vigil.
Yes.
Followed by a speaking program. Tell us about that.
Well, it's something that we do every year. It's our annual vigil. And it's interesting, on the introduction, I heard you saying this is about good things that are happening in New Bedford. And I thought, well, it's a sad thing, but it's also a good thing because we do get together and remember the victims who have died across the state and also those that we've lost in our community over the past number of years. And it's an opportunity to remember those victims and to go forward from that event strengthened in our resolve to make sure that there are fewer victims each year. And we do have a speaking program. We have a survivor that will speak. We have music. It'll be live music again this year. And we find that people leave there really moved and really changed by coming together in this ecumenical service, as it is, to remember victims that have died.
So there is a candlelight vigil and a walk through downtown New Bedford.
Yes. We start at 6 o'clock at City Hall, in front of City Hall, and then we do what we call a march in silence to the Unitarian Church, which is on Union Street. And this is to symbolize the silence that victims live in every single day. You will find people find it's a short walk, but it's hard to stay quiet all that time, because you might want to say something to the person next to you or think of something, and then you realize, wow, these people live in silence for years and years.
And that will be followed at the Unitarian Church by the ecumenical service.
Yes, by the service, yes.
And something that is also somber and very moving is the Clothesline Project, which will be part of that service.
Yes.
And on display will be various T-shirts. Why don't you explain?
Well, the Clothesline Project is sponsored by the YWCA, and every year we also do a small project at the Women's Center where we have people come in and do their own T-shirts. And this is something that comes from the fact that women used to get together as they hung clothes and talk over the clothesline about issues that were important to them. And, of course, this is an important issue if someone is being abused. So that's where it started from. And the different T-shirts have different meaning, whether or not you've been a victim of sexual assault, incest, domestic violence. All of the different T-shirts have a meaning, and they are meaningful. It's absolutely amazing what you see on the clothesline and how it affects you.
October 23rd, 6 p.m., starts at City Hall.
At 6 p.m., and the service starts, if you cannot march, you can come right to the Unitarian Church at 6:30 for the service.
You're listening to Town Square Sunday. My guest is Pamela MacLeod-Lima, director of the Women's Center of Greater New Bedford, and we're talking about October being Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And as you heard Pamela explain, they have two events every year, and always well-attended, and always with a very powerful message. Let's get down a little bit to the nuts and bolts, if you will, about the Women's Center. What do you do for victims of domestic violence? What is the procedure? How does it happen?
Well, it's interesting. Our tagline is that we are the door to a future free from violence. And by that we mean that by coming in our door, if you are a survivor of domestic violence or sexual assault, you find not just our services, which include individual therapy and group therapy and some housing programs, and, of course, residential services, shelter, but also you have a line to all of our partners in the community. We have wonderful collaborating partners that provide different services like career counseling or more intensive mental health services or substance abuse counseling. All of our partners have been in place for a long time. We've been here 45 years. And so we are able, by referral, to get people all the comprehensive services that they need to put their lives back together after violence. And we have community-based services. You can come for counseling, group or individual, through community-based services. And if you're in dire need of shelter in terms of needing your safety being a huge issue and you need to get away, we also have 3 shelters as well. And we have a specialized shelter that is for those women who have domestic violence or sexual assault issues, but also might have substance abuse issues they're struggling with or mental health issues. And so that's a longer-term stay than our emergency shelter, but it really helps people to get back on their feet and to put those things in place that they need to be whole again.
Those shelters include provisions for children if someone has to
Yes, absolutely.
pick up and get
absolutely,
out?
Yes. They're family shelters, and we absolutely host children. And, of course, while we're speaking of children, I will mention also that we have a wonderful child trauma program right at the Women's Center that is bilingual. We have 2 bilingual therapists, actually 3 now. And we provide services to children from age 3 and up. As soon as a child is able to participate in speaking and telling of their trauma, then we would serve them. And our clinicians are wonderfully trained and keep up with all the modalities that are current in terms of treating children who have been traumatized. So all of our services across the board are trauma-informed and consumer-centered. So they're centered on the survivor.
How many cases do you see in a year? Is there
Well, it's
ballpark?
Interesting. It's hard to say. Ballpark, hundreds. And if you count our shelters and the people we see in shelter and community-based, you're in the thousands. I think it was last year it was 1,400 plus. And then, of course, we do a lot of education and outreach in the community, so we reach thousands and thousands of people that way. Doing this today, I'm hoping that we'll reach people because you have a great number of listeners, and we hope that they're paying attention and thinking about what they can do to help victims of domestic violence, people that might be in their own family or in their own circle of friends, because we know it is endemic. And so all of us know somebody who's had a bad dating relationship, a bad interpersonal relationship, or maybe living in violence.
As members of the general public, what can we do? What can all of us do?
Well, the most important thing is to break the silence. For many years we didn't speak about domestic violence, and now we're speaking about it, and we need to absolutely continue to do that, to talk about it, to keep our eyes open to our friends and family and our loved ones. If you see someone who's being isolated once they're in a relationship and they're not reaching out to you anymore, they're not talking to you anymore, you want to find out why that is, what's happening, because isolation is one of the tools of abuse. So you just want to be tuned in to what's happening to those people around you and speak up and make sure that people that you think may be in trouble get our information.
Where can people learn more about the Women's Center, Pamela?
Well, we have a website, www.thewomenscentersc.com. That stands for the Women's Center South Coast, so you can remember that little SC in there. We have a website. We also, of course, if you are troubled by sexual assault, domestic violence, anything in the news can now trigger you, we have a 24-hour hotline, and that is 508-999-6636. And you can call anytime and speak to a domestic and sexual assault counselor.
And again, the Candlelight Vigil is October 23rd.
It's a Tuesday night, October 23rd. We're hoping we don't get rained on or this kind of wind and rain that we're expecting today. But our people come out there stalwart. We've been out there in some monsoons and still done our March of Silence. So we hope you've come out, but you can always go straight to the Unitarian Church as well, and at 6:30 and be part of the vigil. It's a very moving experience. We invite you to come not because it's a fun thing, but because it's something that you need to do so that you know how to reach out to victims and that you understand the depth of the problem.
Pamela MacLeod-Lima, thanks for coming in and speaking with us during this Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Thanks again. Good luck for the events.
I appreciate so much for having me, Jim. Thank you.
Don't go away. Townsquare Sunday returns in just one moment.